Dreamers everywhere, welcome to the Dueling Disney podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Andee Zomerman.
And I'm the other one of your hosts, Andee. How's everybody doing?
Good. There's a third person on our screen today. Do you want to
noticed.
Introduce?
Yes, this is Emilie Mitchell, who I work with at a very large public institution on the west coast of California that's not Stanford.
I don't think I know what you're talking about. Some private institution?
No, not a private institution. We have to follow
public?
the law.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Emilie Mitchell and I work together, and Emilie works as our violence prevention coordinator. Her actual title is much longer than that. Emilie, what's your actual title that we gave you?
Yes. Every time I share it with my students, and I'm like, I hope this is the longest title I ever own as a person. But it's Violence Prevention and Education Program Coordinator. Yes.
You can't. Have you ever tried to make that like a cool acronym or anything?
I haven't, but I think we've tried like VP.
Yes.
And I'm like, that just feels like I'm not there yet. I'm not ready, but I don't know if I would get different reactions.
I'll give it to my 7th graders. We're really good at coming up with acronyms. So
okay,
that's what we do. Yeah.
That's really helpful.
My title may be the only title longer. Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Support and Belonging.
That is true. So little known fact, Alfred and I work in the same like office space. We're actually like right at kitty corner from his office. And sometimes when I'm like, oh yeah, Alfred, and then I look at his title nameplate and on his office. That's the only way I actually know your title. It's very complicated.
I do the same thing. Like, no kidding around. There's been times where I'm on a call and they're like, what's your title? And I have to like grab one of my business cards sort of surreptitiously and go.
Great question.
I just say, I don't know. He works for a college. He does something.
Thank you.
Well,
all these years of friendship, I'm glad I've impressed you.
I've said that since 1990, so I'm pretty accurate.
You've
no matter
been right
what.
that whole time.
I know. So
I should probably find something else to do. I don't know what to tell you.
It's too late at this point. All right. Well, how's everybody's Disney weeks been? It's the start of the holidays. Emilie, let's start with you. How's your Disney week?
Yes.
As our guest.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I'm super stoked to be part of this. It's really fun to be on podcasts, and I love listening to y'all. I'm a big Disney fan, so I was thinking a little bit about my week this week, and I realized I do Disney stuff without intentionally doing it. I was watching Nightmare Before Christmas this week.
Yay!
Good one to start off on, I feel, for the season as you're transitioning. It's really fun to watch that movie. And I'm like, man, this is just cultural appropriation. It's really fascinating. And he learns a lesson, and it's great. So
I've never thought of it in that way, but it's like cultural appropriation, the movie. It really is.
It is. It really is.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's really great. So, that was my Disney time. And it made me think of when I would go to Disney a lot. My aunt works there, so I would go all the time for free. Yeah, and I would always find like the Christmas store. It's always open all year round, but there's always the Nightmare Before Christmas section, and I would always like find the cool stuff in the back. It was fun.
Oh, that's so cute that you were a child or even born. Were you even born when that movie came out? I mean, I don't know how old you are. You don't have to tell me how old you are, but seriously, like, it's cute that you were a child when that movie was out.
It's kind of a spooky movie. Like, if you watch it, it's kind of scary, but I was never afraid. I always loved haunted houses and stuff, so it's like the best movie.
Does your aunt still work there?
She does. She actually works at the Monsters Laugh floor. So she started, she's been at Disney forever. So she used to be in the Beauty and the Beast show.
Love that.
Before that, she was a Christmas tree in the parade. And she famously got her foot stuck in the little like cart.
The train?
Yeah, the little,
Oops.
Yeah, it was really fun. And then she worked at the bird show as Guana Jane so this is all in Orlando. I should say.
Yeah.
And then now she's at Monsters Inc. and she loves it. She's been there for a long time, so she does improv stuff. Oh, she also worked at Pleasure Island when that was a thing.
I miss Pleasure Island.
Brandy's responding because she has forced both of her children to work at Disney.
Oh my gosh, I love that for you.
Oh yeah. I mean, duh. There's a reason we spent all that money taking them multiple times a year. I got to get my ROI, my return
You
on
gotta,
investment.
you gotta
They're gonna be
plant seeds.
in their
Mhm.
60s before you get all that money back.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I pretty much. I don't know. We've been a lot of times on their passes. We might have made it back, and look how much the prices have raised since we did take them in the first place.
Yeah.
So-
and
This is
also
true.
priceless memories, right?
Yeah, that
So-
too.
I mean, I could
And-
put a price on it.
No. In the fact that priceless memories, and the fact that we have the memory maker, because actually
Yeah.
that's because of kind family members that have it
Mhm.
that share with us. So anyway, okay, I digress again. Do you want to share your Disney week, even though I already know what it is, and most of us do
I mean,
because
do
you put
you?
it on? Yeah, because you put
Do
it
you?
on.
Because it's one of the
Instagram.
few times I actually used our social media and put it on Instagram. Yes, I
Yeah.
was at Disneyland about 24 hours ago, but that's not what I was going to say was my Disney week. Because I was at a meeting at UC Irvine, and so in the evenings after the meetings, I would go down to Disneyland. I tried out the new Hungry Bear barbecue.
Oh,
Not
I
bad.
saw that. Was it
Not
okay?
bad.
Yeah?
It was okay. I mean, it's theme park barbecue, right? It's
All
not
right.
like super smoked, like cooked for hours
Yeah.
barbecue, but I would have it again.
Okay.
But what I was going to share for my Disney week is, because this is one of the origins of the podcast, is I signed up for the Disneyland 10K
Right.
Yes.
next September, which we did 10 years ago for those who've, not 10 years ago, 5 years ago for those who've listened to the podcast for a long time. I got my weight loss reduction surgery about 5 years ago.
7
and
years.
then
It was 7 years
it's been
ago.
7 years? Oh my
Mhm.
gosh.
Wow.
And then Andee and Annika and Emma all ran the 10K with me at Disneyland in a very, very, very hot September morning in Anaheim. And so I signed up to do that again this coming September.
Well, and then you signed up to do the run with us at Disney World and just decided that your school, the title of doctor, was more important to you. And so you didn't end up coming with us to run that.
I was in the middle of doctor school. Yeah.
Yeah. And that is where I learned, actually, when I was running that 10K, I learned or reminded myself, actually, that I actually don't like running. And so
But we had so much fun. Even if you don't like running, the Disney 10Ks are a lot of fun.
They're
not
fun.
super competitive.
But
And
also,
you stop and take pictures with characters. Happening, so.
when you told me that you signed up for the next time, do you notice that I didn't jump in and say, "Oh, I'll try to get in"?
I did
said,
notice that.
Wow.
I did notice that. And was I hurt? Yeah, sure.
You were not. Of course. You were absolutely not.
Emily came into my office and was like, "Why are you crying?" And I had to explain my friend did not sign up to do the 10K with me.
If you were a real friend, you would have talked to me before you signed up and said, "Hey, this is coming up. I'm planning on signing up. Would you like to do it with me?"
I don't include
kind of like
other people
we
in
do
my
with
plans.
you. We do with you.
Look, I mean, we're going to get to it eventually.
Yes, it is a good thing. Emily,
I was going to say, this is very good.
Styles.
This is so good.
My own, debilitating need for autonomy. But to be fair, I didn't decide to do it until 1 a.m, the morning before the sign up. And then by the time I finished signing up, they were all sold out. So if you want me to text you at 1:30 a.m., I'm happy to.
You're wrong, though, because you are the one that actually suggested that we do it together the first time. At the beginning of 2017, you said, "Hey, in September, let's do this." And I was like, "I hate running, but I like my friends, so I'm going to do it." And then I ran, and then I'm like, "Oh yeah, I hate running."
Yeah, but you guys had a blast. You guys got those fancy shoes and
we did get fancy shoes. We did.
It's very cool.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna have to do a whole other episode on Disney and their shoe licensing with people. It's a thing. Trust me,
it's a whole thing.
Yeah, I've done a couple of the halves that've been really fun. But yeah.
But it's very interesting. I'm learning a lot behind the scenes with my girls both working there. So anyway.
What was your Disney week?
It was an embarrassing Disney week, I got to tell you. It was another the thing about when you go to trivia or when you play trivia and there's a Disney question, it's like a personal attack on your psyche, when you get one wrong, it is embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
Well, what's worse is when you get one wrong and they are wrong That's what drives me nuts.
That is ridiculous. And
Yeah,
luckily,
yeah.
the place where I'm on a trivia team, this guy is great. I love him. I think he's honestly the best trivia that I've ever been to, and it's general knowledge trivia. But every once in a while, there
General
is a
knowledge?
Disney. Yeah. Oh my God. Oh, blast from the past. Anyway, so let's see if you guys can get these two. One I got right, which I thought was
Okay.
fairly easy, but I was the only one that got it right in the bar. So,
Wow.
you guys will get this though. So what's the name? Well, Emilie will get it. What's the name of the superstar character in the Goofy movie that Goofy took Max to at the end?
Oh gosh.
Oh, that's a good question. I've never seen the Goofy movie.
I've seen it like
a
once.
couple times. I don't remember his name.
Wasn't the group called Powerline, or was that the guy?
That was the guy. It was the guy's name. It was Powerline. So, and
Great job.
I only knew that because of Emma and Annika. Like,
yeah. Thank you for your support, Emily. I'm not used to having a supportive friend during this podcast.
I love trivia, but I realize I'm not very good at it. But I love when my team wins.
Oh yeah.
So I'm there to be like, I trust you. Great job. I'm very impressed. I forgot that name.
I'm addicted 100%. A good friend of my coworker, actually, Miranda, she's the one that said, hey, come with us. And now Ed and I come together. We're addicted. We love it. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here's the one.
Okay.
This is the one I'm asking both of you. I'm very embarrassed that I didn't know this because it was one of those things that I knew sometime in my life because my answer that I put, anyway, okay. What's Donald Duck's middle name?
Oh, yeah. No, he has one, doesn't he?
I know. Yes, he does. And I knew exactly the movie that it came from, and I knew everything. And for some reason, the name was not coming to me. And then once I heard
the
it,
name popped into my head, but I have no idea if it's correct or where it came from.
What are you going to say?
The name that popped into my head was Worthington.
Okay. You were along the lines that I was on. I said Bartholomew, but I knew that wasn't right, but I knew it was in that realm.
Is it Huey, Dewey, Louie? That's his middle name?
Just gonna say Gregory, but I really know it's not that.
It's Fauntleroy.
Yes,
Fauntleroy.
That's what it is.
Yeah. And I hated it.
I'm with you. I would have just torn my hair out, and I don't even have hair. It would have. Oh my God.
Yeah. And so I knew I wasn't going to get it right, but I knew that in my psyche, somewhere in my brain, that information was there. And so it was really bothering me that I couldn't pull it out. And now I'll never forget it. I will always know on my deathbed, you will be able to ask me what Donald Duck's middle name is. And because we just know it. And I know we've had it probably in trivia before. I don't know. Anyway, it was from when
getting it again.
Trivia is very important to Andee and I. I don't know if I've told you the story. That's pretty much how we met. But and we don't need to get into who won or who didn't. I did. But, we...
Or why we started playing in the first place, because Al doesn't know anything.
We definitely... Oh, I was going to say because you were sick.
No. How did we meet in the first place? Because you were wrong about a Disney fact. Yeah.
And then I was right for the 30 years after that.
Well, obviously Emilie is here for a reason today.
Yes.
Al's going to explain what that reasoning is.
Yes, we had a topic that we wanted to talk to Emilie about, but that's actually a lie. Emilie is here to actually mediate between you and I, because our listeners are saying that we argue too much. No.
That's what they say.
Here's how this came to be. When we went to Florida recently and came back, and we were just in the office avoiding our actual work, and Emma and I were talking, and Emily asked how the trip was. And I said, oh, it was good. And it's always weird because I go solo so often, but then I was going with Andee's family. And I think it's a family that their ancestors were frightened, were cursed by a witch in some previous generation who got mad because somebody said yes when they really meant no, because your family will spend a half hour. Yes, I want to do this isn't enough. It's always, hey, do you want to go ride Space Mountain now? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. I mean, we don't have to go if you don't want to go. No. I said yes. Okay. But is it really yes? And meanwhile, I'm off to the side going, I mean, they said, yeah, I don't because in my family, that conversation would be, do you want to go to Space Mountain? Yeah. And then a half hour later, I didn't want to go. Well, then go home.
I love that.
Then why are you here? So Emilie and I were talking, and Emilie said, oh, It's interesting. I've been studying attachment theory and different
Mhm.
theories of how people sort of interact, particularly in families, and sort of where that comes from. And I said, I think that would be really good for the podcast. And
Mhm.
then I said to Andee, hey, I know somebody at work who's really smart, and
They
we should bring
couldn't
her on the
come today,
podcast.
but
And they could make it. And we should bring Emilie on the podcast to talk about attachment styles. So,
Aw,
and we're not
thanks.
just going to cover specific attachment theory. We're just
Mhm.
going to sort of go where it takes us. Emilie, can you tell our listeners a little bit
Yes.
about sort of in general attachment theory and why it interests you?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Al. And yeah, I could fill in for that really smart person. Happy to do it. So
I
one of
mean,
the
smarter
things,
than the two of us. Let's be clear.
That's not hard to
no,
do.
like so many different knowledges, right? But so in addition to being an educator,
I'm sorry, that's what I tell the 7th graders when they just don't get it. Oh, we have so many different gifts.
So many
different
strengths, and no, it's true. But as an educator, I'm also a student for marriage and family therapy. So I'm in my final year there. So it's been interesting kind of like learning these different theories and seeing ways that I can like apply it and get to know. And I think one of the things that really inspired me to think more about this is that I feel like when I go on vacation, I get kind of stressed out, and vacation actually is a stressful time. It's actually on the list of like stressful events that people can experience, even if it's fun, because it's a little different than the status quo. And I was trying to understand like, why am I kind of showing up in this dynamic in a way that I don't really like, or what kind of rubbed me the wrong way? What's kind of going on here? And so while Al was kind of sharing, I was like, oh, that's really interesting because I've been thinking a lot about that too. So when it comes to like some of the things that I'm going to talk about, and again, this is more of me just getting to know these concepts. I wouldn't say I'm like an expert on this at all, but it's things that I've learned and started to kind of think a little bit about. So attachment theory is this idea that like when we're young, there are different needs that need to be met. And we meet that through a caretaker. And if we feel like we have a secure attachment, we feel like our needs can be met by this being, and we feel like safe. If we feel like we can't get our needs met for whatever reason, maybe that person wasn't able to be there for us, or maybe that person unfortunately was even like abusive or neglectful, like all these things, it can make us feel like for whatever reason, this caretaker is telling me that I cannot rely on them. And that means that the world is not a safe place. And other people kind of have taken this attachment theory and attached it to different things. But one of the things I'm going to reference today is Karen Horney's like 3 fixed interpersonal coping strategies, which
Ooh,
yes, and it's really fascinating, and I
it's
think a
itching my
lot about
doctor
it.
brain.
So Karen Horney, she comes from like a psychodynamic kind of vibe. But she had this idea that based on like the way that we have either gotten our needs met or not, we may have different coping strategies that helped us when we were children to meet those needs and make us feel safe. But then what happens when they're fixed, it means that we apply it to relationships that may not be the dynamic that we came from. And so it actually no longer serves us. So everything I'm going to share are not, there's like not good or bad. It's just, is it serving us or is it not serving us? So the first one being moving towards folks. There's moving towards, moving against, and moving away. So moving towards folks have this desire to like move towards folks to feel loved and accepted. They may present as really like people pleasing or putting other people's needs before their own. There might also be kind of like poor boundary setting. And it can also lead to feelings of resentment, right? Like really just like overextending yourself because it's a fear of this person's going to leave me if I don't please them. And then I will no longer be safe. So that's the moving towards kind of people. The moving against people may have this kind of like feeling of needing to fight to feel safe. So they may be really domineering, maybe really competitive, very argumentative.
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, you know,
Here, let
sometimes
me
we
give
don't.
you just 1 or 17 examples. Hold on, I've got these written down.
Moving against people are really fascinating to work with as clients too, because it can be just like a barrier that they're putting up. They're feeling not safe, and the only way that they've been able to feel safe is by protecting themselves in an aggressive manner. And again, there's times where that needs to happen, right? But other times where it doesn't serve us and whatever our like needs are or goals are in a relationship. And also this thought of like, this person isn't your dad, this person isn't your mom, this is a different person, and we're kind of applying this strategy that you no longer need. And it's interesting working with moving against folks because the first kind of stage can be really abrasive for a new therapist. But then later on, once that wall comes down, there's a really strong relationship of like, you're not pushing me away, I'm not going anywhere, and you can rely on me. And then the moving away people can have a desire to maybe be alone. So it's extreme independence, maybe an inability to ask for help. It can be really difficult and challenging to do that.
These people sound horrible.
Even so folks that like, even if they really want to ask for help, it can be really challenging. There can be like labels like the lone wolf that can like come up, or compulsion to present as like really self-sufficient. I don't need anyone because I've never been able to rely on someone in my past. So I don't need anyone. This is safer. If I do rely on someone, they can hurt me. And so those are kind of like some of the 3 coping strategies as well.
So that third one is like the cool, awesome one, right?
No. I just think it's funny that if you're afraid of being hurt and you're best friends with somebody who wants to hurt people, that's gotta be awesome.
Right? Yeah, well, that's a good point. I haven't thought of
this. It's managed to last for over 30 years.
Notice we don't live in the same city.
Yeah, this is true. Well, but Emilie, one of the things that you mentioned, which I think is really important as we sort of go through this conversation for context,
confrontation.
Confrontation. Freud has been disproved. And I think it's really important is this isn't, I don't want people to take this away as a judgment or as sort of, if you're this type of person, not only in terms of beating yourself up if you identify with one of those styles, but also in sort of saying, hey, that person's a this. And therefore, it's really the context that you've given, I think, is important. That it serves you in some areas and it doesn't serve you in others. Because what I don't want to do is have people go away and sort of take this as a, hey, here's what I have figured out about you. And now I'm going to sort of beat you up with it.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that.
Are you just like preempting what was going to happen between our conversations in the future? Are you just like trying to blanket pardon?
I would never do that. No, but I definitely, one of the things when I have seen or found out about sort of new theories and things of that sort, and I've done it, I've seen other people's do it. It sort of quickly moves into a way to identify and stereotype people and sort of put them into a box. And from listening to Emilie, I heard her say pretty explicitly that that's not what this is, and I wouldn't want folks to sort of leave with that. So I just feel like it's important to kind of like reiterate. Emilie already said it, but to reiterate, because I recognize myself very much in one of those 3 types, and my first impulse is to be like, oh, what's wrong with me? Yeah. And then I had to say, Emilie literally just said that that's not.
Oh, that's funny, because my first impulse was to say, what's wrong with you?
That's generally your first impulse in most circumstances. But I'm curious, Emilie. One of I love the 3 examples you've shared. I'm wondering if you could give us an example or examples of how these may manifest themselves. Let's say on a trip to a theme park. Let's just pick.
Pull that out of the air.
Pull something out of the air. Let's say a Universal. Let's go with a Disney theme park.
Sure.
Right. So let's say you're in a family group, traveling to, let's say, I don't know, Disney's Hollywood Studios.
Love. great
How
this
would
time of
this
year.
manifest itself? How would they
Yeah.
manifest themselves?
Right. So there's a lot of things that can happen, right? So let's think of an example of maybe there's a discussion of where do we want to go first, right? Like you get to a theme park, you finally got all ready, your sunscreened up. I think what can happen is maybe, again, people can be a little stressed out. And I think what is important is that these are coping strategies. So when we're feeling stressed or those kinds of things, that's kind of when it can come out
We
of
revert
like,
back to them. Yeah.
yeah, we've relied on them in the past and they've helped us. So again, everything that we're doing, and I love that you said that, Al, too, again, is like, we're trying to just keep ourselves safe. We're trying to figure out how to do that. And this has worked before, so let's try it. And so maybe we're stressed out about like, okay, so maybe like a moving towards person might ask everyone like, well, what do you want to do? And really maybe they might have like, I actually really want to go see the Little Mermaid show before it might leave, or maybe never leave, but it might, right? And so like, but they'll ask like, well, are you sure you want to do that? Like, I'm happy to do this. Like, where do you want to go? So that might be like a moving towards person. A moving against person might feel like, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. You know, all those things. And then a moving away person might feel like, okay, so the decision is going to XYZ. You know, I'm going to go kind of like do my own thing. Don't worry about it. You just have fun. Right. So I think that's a way that it could like kind of manifest in that way. And again, I think what's important too, like a vacation is your vacation. You can do however you want to do it. And just thinking like, oh, is there, is this really how I want to spend my day? Do I actually really want to be with people? And I'm just feeling like I'm a burden to them. So I'm just going to go off on my own. Or like, do I really want to actually do these different things? But I'm actually trying to make everyone happy, which is kind of impossible to do. And is that really actually my job? And we could talk a little bit about like roles as well. And also like the stages of a group forming too. Is this the first time you've been together as a group? Is this
Versus
a family?
Yeah.
Yes. And how does that kind of show up too?
Yeah.
And then the moving against as well too. It's like, well, why am I feeling so combative and activated? What's going on? And that doesn't make me feel really good right now either. And yeah, so I think that could be a good example. Yeah.
And Andee, I'm curious about your take, because I think our listeners know, and I know you tend to be the planner for your family vacations, and that holds a lot of stress just from that perspective, making sure everybody has what they need and gets where they're going and is safe and comfortable. So I'm curious what role, if you feel comfortable sharing, like what role do you see yourself playing, and sort of what are the stressors that sort of come along with the role that you play in your family around, particularly around vacations?
Well, it's interesting because as I'm listening to Emilie, I think I was raised by very moving toward mother, right? And she's probably listening to this, and that's okay. I don't think she would disagree with that. At heart, I'm a moving against people. At heart, in my brain, I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. But I would never do that with company. Does that make sense? If I'm with my own family, with the four of us, I would never. If I'm with the four of us, my immediate family, children and husband, I am very much a moving against. I have no problem saying, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't, very witchy. However,
I
don't want to say the B word.
I feel confident because I feel like I also get that when I join. I feel very much a part of the family, and always that.
Always true though, because, and I'm going to ask Al if he can, and I think we've already talked about this a little bit, but, I really tried this last time, at least with my relationship with you, to not be so moving toward, not even being so moving against, but more moving away. Like I really had to this time concentrate on, you know what, people are people and they're going to do what they want. Whereas in the past and the last time that Al was with us, the four of us, was in the beginning of 2022. And that was a really, really hard trip, I think, for both of us, because I was so moving toward, I'm like, oh my God, I have to show him everything. We have to go everywhere. I need to do all the things and plan all the things because Al hasn't been here in a long time and we have a lot to cover. So let's get going. In the meantime, Al had a bum hip and is in pain walking. right?
Mm,
But
mhm.
Al's not like Al's not necessarily going, okay, I mean, yes, he and Ed, my husband, had knee problems at that time. They did sit when they could, but they never either one of them just said, no, we are not doing this anymore. We are going back to the hotel room to rest. And in the meantime, I'm like, okay, we got to do this. We got to show you this. We got to do this, blah, 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 which was too much even for me. And so it was this weird dynamic of me trying to people please everyone. And I'm not a people pleaser. So people please everyone. And then Al and even Ed's dynamic of, okay, we're in pain. We don't want to do anymore, but we're not going to tell her because we
We're
want
afraid
her
of
to
you.
do her.
Yeah.
Well, that. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's a given. So it was really weird. So this time when we went, I was trying to be, there was a lot of other dynamic stuff going on, but with Al, I was really trying to be like, okay, hey, do your thing. You want to come along, come along. You don't. No hurt feelings, no nothing. We even did something that I never would do before, and it caused me so much guilt, but we had a chance to do an activity
Oh,
that
that's right.
I couldn't invite Al to. And in the past, I would have said, nope, we're not doing it because not all of us can do it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But it worked out. We did it. He did his thing. I don't know.
Which is a funny thing, because for me and my sort of autonomous style, like I still spent the vast majority of my time with you guys because that's why I went to spend time with you guys. And I know that those sorts of things are important, and you're the kind of person that's like, if we all can't do it, I don't want to do it. And I am such a person of like, if you all can do it and I can't do it, oh, cool. And like, that's as I am not, I'm just like, oh, too bad. And then I move on with my life. Like I think about it for maybe 30 seconds and I go, oh, I can find, I said to you multiple times during the trip, I am more than happy with my own company.
Yeah. And I had to listen to you and believe you this time.
Yeah. Which I just, this is one of the reasons why I think when Emilie and I were having the conversation about this, I thought it was fascinating. And particularly for our listeners, I can only imagine the different types of dynamics that play in different people's families and different people's sort of friend groups when they travel. And for me, this whole thing is fascinating, particularly, I think this is truth in all of life, but I do think when people go on vacation, like it's a concentrated dose of all of these sorts of ways of interacting with people that really show up. And the thing that's really fascinating to me, Emilie, is this idea that when we're under stress, we're less capable of sort of hiding that trueness. And so like late in the night or towards the end of the vacation, I think more and more, and I've just seen that on different sort of vacations I've taken with friends and family. But like day one, morning of day one, everybody's on their best behavior. Evening of day 5, nobody's pretending anymore.
Well, so what do you do? I have that question for Emilie then. Tomorrow, we have a very good friend who is tomorrow going to Disneyland with her extended family. So their dynamic is she's single, adult, professional, no children. She's in the middle of her family. So her older
happy.
Yeah, happy. Exactly. She is. Her older sister, married with 2 children, her younger brother married with 1 child, and then grandma and grandpa, her mom and dad, are taking the whole family to Disneyland. Now that's a huge, weird dynamic. How do you prepare yourself ahead of time, no matter what role in the family you might be, whether it's mom and dad, older sister, my friend who has no other immediate family of her own. And then, how do you prepare yourself going into this so you don't show up at the park and everybody's angry within 15 minutes?
Right. That's a great question. And some of the things, if it's okay to go a little backwards too, want to highlight too that there's also really specific group norms within a family as well. and the roles that maybe we've been assigned to as children. Maybe we've been parentified, where like we're the caretaker of our own parents, and then how does that show up as us as being a caretaker for everyone at a vacation? And then how might that actually be related to gender roles that have been put on us? How does identity kind of come into that? How does like the burden of planning kind of show up for different genders or different identities? And how does that kind of like come into the mix? And then also another thing, like you were mentioning too, like the shoulds of like, this has to happen. Like, how does that kind of like manifest too? And then this idea of, you know, in family systems theory, it's like this idea of like, there's an equilibrium. There's different roles, and whether they're, you know, helpful for everyone to show up authentically or not, they have been keeping the family working and functioning in the way that works for them, even if it might be harmful or not. And so things change though, and disrupt the equilibrium. Children come, people pass away, like all these different things. And then in addition to that, what does it actually mean to be like a single person? When you go back into your family system, are you like seen a little differently than your siblings that have children? Are you seen as an adult, or are you seen kind of like maybe infantilized a little bit, and you're actually pushed back into like the middle sister, the younger sister, like whatever that kind of looks like? So as far as preparing for it, I think just some of the things that maybe could be helpful is kind of noticing and coming from a place of curiosity. Maybe if you're feeling and noticing your body like being activated, some of those signs, whatever that kind of looks like for you, maybe like taking a breath, taking a step back, being like, I'm safe, we're here, recentering yourself and kind of seeing like, oh, there's like some different dynamics going on. Also recognizing and giving yourself grace of like, I was just doing the best I could, just like they were trying to do the best they were doing. And then also knowing that there's this like idea of like forming, storming, norming, performing with groups, if you know that too, if I can throw that in there as well, where like you're first like forming as a group, and then you're storming because you're realizing like, oh, like this norm of my family getting up early and having breakfast together, and they're not doing the same thing, or things have changed. And then you're starting to norm like, okay, this is actually the process. This is actually the different like stages of the day, or like the priorities of the group, or the things that we matter to us and things like that. And then we're moving on, we're doing it. But just recognizing that it's a process, and conflict isn't like, if conflict happens, this is how we'll handle it. It's no, when conflict happens, this is how we can move forward and things like that. So I threw a lot at you, I realized, but
really interesting. And it even got me thinking, because of course I'm using this as a therapy session for myself now. Al, you're not needed anymore. You can do whatever you need to do. No, but it got me thinking as you were talking about that I'm about to be, or Ed and I, my husband and I, are in the process of being that matriarch and patriarch, right? Where our two daughters are now adults and they have partners. And so, you know, someday soon they may or may not have children. I don't know. But you know, that puts me as the mother or mother-in-law.
Yeah.
God forbid.
Yeah.
And we all know. We all know
mother.
I will be that mother-in-law. No, I don't know. But, you know, how do you...
Like you were born to it.
I mean, yeah, I know, for real. But like, how do you do that, right? You don't want your family to have a miserable time if you're going to have them all come on a trip or pay for everybody to be on a trip. You want them to have a good time, but...
Right.
But is that universal, though? I don't...
What do you mean?
Like, I do think that you, Andee, when you're taking people and you're traveling with folks, want everybody to have a good time.
Yeah.
I don't think everybody
really
does. I've definitely been on trips where with people who everybody's got their own thing going on.
Yeah.
And I definitely, and let me be clear, I'm also thinking about, I'm going to a family funeral this weekend and about to really leap into this. That the dynamics that happen in people's family is maybe the top mind is I want everybody to have a good time, but I definitely travel with people where it's like, I want you to have a good time on my terms. Or if I see you having a good time and I'm not having a good time, I'm going to do what I can to take that good time away because I'm not enjoying myself.
Oh,
Nobody's gonna enjoy themselves. So it's interesting to me that, and something else you mentioned, Emily, was about how roles shift and change and how you
Yeah.
can become infantilized,
yeah.
even though in other circumstances you're not. It's one of the things, it's a Disney podcast. Sometimes, and this is fresh in my mind because I was just at Disneyland for a couple of days. Sometimes I go, did they call it the happiest place on earth because they were really into irony? Because
That's so true.
I find the distinction
So
between how generally, and this is something I noticed because when I go solo, you can really sort of observe this. The difference between if I'm just walking through the normal day, I don't see nearly as many people yelling at each other and having arguments as I do at the Disney park. Like you can't go 3 feet at a park without somebody going being like, fine, do what you want.
Yeah,
Right?
it's so
It happens
stressful.
a lot.
Yeah.
It's a stressful environment.
Yeah.
And I do think, because I know you, it's one of the reasons we're friends, you genuinely want everybody to have a good time. I can't even say everybody in my family. My older brother who passed away, who I love, but I often say if he showed up today and it's a miracle and it was all a mistake and he's alive, within 15 minutes I'd be like, you got to leave my house, because he just was like he was the person who if you were having a good time and he was even slightly happy about something completely unrelated, he wanted everybody to be miserable. And I do think that that's something that shows up in some families, even after you've spent thousands of dollars to go to a Disney park. So, I'm curious Emily's take, and I know you also had some things outside of attachment theory you wanted to talk about. But I'm curious your take.
Well, I think also a piece too, like I always think about capitalism when I start talking about this, because I think there's a lot of pressure to get the most out of it, not be cheated out of it.
Yeah.
Really extremely expensive. Because I've been in Japan and I've been to America, and there's a difference in the experience at the theme parks, I will say. But as far as like stress, there's
interesting.
I think there's an individualistic kind of piece too of like, I'm going to find the best way to like have fun, and I know the secrets, right? And it's really fascinating. And so that's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. But I think thinking about roles and expectations to things really shift, especially if we've never been in this kind of group before. What happens when there's 2 planners in a group now? That'll be fascinating, right? Or like what happens, there's like a funny video I've seen of like just like a bunch of like active listeners talking and they actually don't talk about anything. So like what if like everyone's like a people pleaser and there's no decision that's able to be made?
It reminds me of that YouTube video, the floor where they mistakenly assigned all the RAs. And everybody keeps coming out the hallway going, hey, can you guys keep it down?
Right. And I think also a big piece too is having fun means different things to different people.
Yeah.
So like maybe I feel like this person isn't having fun because I'm not. So I'm assuming what they're having fun is different. But I was also raised by a moving towards person. And she's a mom, and her role was making sure everyone was happy. And that was like a goal that I feel like is very difficult. And is it your job to do that? And so when we think about like secure attachment, maybe like when people say like, I'm good, like we believe them, or we feel safe enough to be like, actually, I'd really like to do this. Is there a way that we could like negotiate and do this at the beginning or that at the end, or things like that? And then when we think about roles too, and thinking about, and thinking back to like the example you brought, Andee, sorry if my brain's jumping all over the place, but, thinking about
that's what
like,
happens when you're this smart.
No, I'm like, I hope any of this kind of makes sense because again, this is just things that I'm thinking about. But thinking like as a single person traveling in a family, like, do they have their own room or are they bunking with someone? And like, what does that kind of mean? And also, are they able to like do the things that they were wanting to do? Or I don't know. But as far as roles and maybe just like the idea of everyone's experience or expectations might be different, and is there a way that we can be a little bit more direct in our communication of like, this is actually what I would hope to do today, let's see what we can negotiate and figure out to make it a little special for everyone. I don't know how that sits with you all.
Yeah, and I think one of the things you said is that if people say I'm good, then you just have to take their word for it. And if yes, there are some people who might say I'm good without really being good and hoping that someone will say, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Until that fifth, are you sure? And then the person is like, well, I might like to go do this, right? So if you're used to that kind of a relationship, then you're going to think nobody is at their word when they say I'm good. And so actually just making the conscious choice to take them at their word, like even with this time with Al, I'm making the conscious choice with Al to take him at his word. And if he is silently thinking something else, then I just cannot worry about that because
well, and it's outside of your like it's to a certain extent I wonder if it's about agency, right? Which is if I do that, let's say it's fine, I was really hoping you wouldn't, and then I have a disappointment, then that's my disappointment to own, not the other person's disappointment because they didn't ask 5 times, right?
Well,
like, and we all have agency for our own, we're all responsible for our own happiness, right?
I think I mean, yes, people learn that young, but I think because, we just might happen to be a little bit older than Emilie. But I mean,
you are definitely.
I don't have a gray beard. Well, anyway,
salt and pepper, perhaps a little more salt and pepper, but there's pepper in there.
No, I can't even. Now I lost my train of thought. But just letting, but being old enough or being secure enough to say, to not, if you're disappointed because I didn't ask you 5 times, are you sure? Yeah. Being confident enough with myself to not take your disappointment on. Well, I mean, I'm not. And that has happened in the past, right? That has happened in the past. If you're disappointed, I'm disappointed. And, this took years of therapy on my part to just say, you're disappointed.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
And that you're not responsible for someone else's happiness, experience,
right? Or disappointment or experience or any of that. I think you're right. And so, I mean, that's a huge shift. That's a huge shift.
Yeah, and I think like a big piece too is like locus of control and also like just maybe processing like, I'm wondering where that's coming from. Or like when I'm hearing in my head, like everyone has to be happy, whose voice is that? Like where is that kind of coming from? And just being a little curious about it. And then also again, like normalizing that it is very common for people when they're stressed out, even when they love them, even if they've done like vacation before, to have conflict. You're in a new environment. You're all trying to problem solve all day long, right? And that's really stressful. And so just normalizing like conflict may happen, and how can I just make sure that I can, calm myself or regulate myself, honor whatever feelings are kind of coming up, noticing them, getting to know them, being curious, and then also like letting it pass and like moving forward and whatever that looks like to you.
And I've honestly never been on a multi-day trip with a group of people where at some point there was a sort of like a conflict that everybody needed to like take a breather, right? Like that, it's just if it's been more than 2 or 3 days, it you can depend on at some point. And it's not even necessarily, and I've definitely been the person who like drove it where I'm like, oh, I'm being kind of a jerk right now. And it's driving other people crazy, and I need to maybe step away so that I can stop being the thing that's ruining this trip, right? But I also think that one of the things about sort of being a part of a group, whether it's a family of hierarchy or whether it's a group of friends, is it's a situation where you're required by social compact or just sort of by what you're trying to accomplish to lessen your own individual needs and elevate the group needs, right? Which is sort of as that third one, sort of a solo person. I know I have to make a conscious choice to say, hey, the thing that the group wants may not align with what you individually want, and that's okay, because the greater goal is we're all together and enjoying each other's company.
Yeah.
So, we talked a lot about sort of attachment theory. Are there other theories that might come into play?
Yeah, so we definitely like sprinkled in a little bit of like the family systems, like thinking about roles. There's also like different dynamics that can happen in a group too when we're coping with maybe like conflict, that family systems brings up too, which is this fascinating idea of like triangulation. So maybe like a dyad is like at conflict for whatever reason. So let's think of like a couple, right? It's like conflict, but maybe they're not feeling safe enough for whatever reason to like address it directly. There can be a third party that can be like maybe pulled in. Maybe I've seen on TikTok, they call it the emotional support older daughter. Like those kinds of things. It's really fascinating of like, how am I kind of like pulling in maybe different parts of my family to like cope? And again, that's like very normal to like want to vent about something and get support. And it's just when it becomes maybe like no longer serving, or maybe this person is helping like lessen a conflict that's never going to actually be addressed. That's another thing that can happen in groups where there's triangulation occurring. It's really a fascinating thing, and it makes me kind of reflect a lot about how has that kind of shown up for me, and I'm wondering like too, is there, when those things kind of happen, Al, like you were mentioning, is there a way where we can kind of like slow down and think, hey, when I said that thing, I noticed that there was kind of this reaction from you. Just wanted to check in and talk a little bit about that. And again, like just, directly with that person. Or maybe like, thinking about, I do need to kind of like go off a little bit and like give myself some space. So whatever you're needing in that moment.
Yeah.
But triangulation is also something that can occur in family systems theory.
And Emilie, you're talking about being accountable to those around you, and I'm not really interested in that. What I'm really looking for is how can I manipulate my family into doing what I want them to do.
Ooh, now we're into the important stuff.
Ooh, that's very Machiavelli. I haven't read up on Machiavelli, so I can't.
But I do think that part of what you talk about is owning your own sort of behavior and acting in such a way that it's, because here's the thing, none of us are going to sort of get through sort of life with perfection, right? And we all make mistakes, and everybody gets that. But it's sort of that next piece, which is, okay, so I recognize that I've perhaps behaved poorly. I know that a lot of people, not a lot of people, myself, my brain goes, well, okay, I've recognized it, so I'm just going to ignore it. And
interesting.
I'm going to try to act better, but I'm not going to actually go to that person.
Yeah, the repair.
And say, hey, I kind of treated you poorly, right?
Yeah.
But if I just ignore it, they'll get it. And then we can go on, right? And so I think the thing you talk about, which is that third piece, which is the accountability piece, like how do we make ourselves, or how do we open ourselves to be accountable to each other, I guess is my question. And I'm saying this because I've been waiting for Andee to apologize for any number of things.
I was just waiting for you. I was like, okay, here he goes. 30 years of, more than 30 years.
You're right. I'm sorry. You absolutely deserve it, Emilie. If I have ever treated you poorly,
funny,
or in any way made you feel less than, I apologize deeply.
Funny.
And please tell me how I could make it right.
Oh my gosh. It's just such a pleasure being in this space. Talking about like nerdy stuff. It's just really great.
Wow, no one has ever seen it before.
Really?
It's amazing.
Really? Maybe it's my moving towards. I'm not sure. We'll see. I'll have to like reflect on it. But no, I think that what you're talking about is like having the courage to acknowledge harm that we've done to another person and repairing it. And this happens throughout our life with so many different relationships. It's really scary to do it. I think that there's this idea of you're a bad person if you hurt someone.
Mm-hmm.
And so our behaviors can be really hard to acknowledge if we have hurt someone, because it's almost an attack on our identity of, I think I'm a good person, but I've hurt this person. And that really gives me some like cognitive dissonance. Like I'm very confused about this. So I'm going to explain away their harm or their hurt so that I can like maintain okay with my identity, or I'm going to ignore it, like whatever that is. And I think if we just release ourselves from that expectation, which can be really hard, and again, not our fault, we've been kind of socialized to think these different ways and put different expectations. I think having the courage of really just practicing to like acknowledging them, be like, hey, I wanted to follow up. I'm wondering if it would be okay to talk about this really with you right now, maybe later, but I've been thinking about it. And I wanted to apologize for that thing that I did. And if there's anything that I can do to help make it better, please let me know. And again, I think it's releasing ourselves of having this psychological kind of flexibility of understanding that people harm others, whether they intend to or not. And how can we be courageous and healing each other and repairing.
Did you hear that, Andee? Did you hear it?
Shut up.
There's like triangulation happening like in real time. It's really fun. It's really fun.
Yeah, we're good at that.
Yeah. To be fair, we are pretty good at that. Andee, did you have anything else for Emilie? Any last questions?
I just, not so much questions, but I just think about how timely this episode is. Just because, I mean, well, I think it's evergreen.
Holidays are coming.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like evergreen for sure, in the fact that holidays are coming. So most of us are going to be surrounded by people. Also, though, holidays are a big time when family groups do go to theme parks such as Disney. We go often. Comparatively, but there are people who like save forever to take their families, like grandchildren and cousins and everything. So this is like a once in a lifetime opportunity, and this is going to be our vacation. And just anything, I mean, Emilie, all your advice to give them to just like, oh my gosh, let's not have this be a waste of money, a waste of time, and have us all hating each other at the end of this. It's just a gift, I think.
I mean, I agree. The pressures of capitalism, like we exist. And look, we have talked a lot, about sort of that cognitive dissonance of having a Disney podcast at the same time as both of us are sort of suspect of sort of capitalism and the corporate the entity. And, I'm okay with that because I still like Mickey Mouse t-shirts.
I know.
But that the pressure, as Emilie points out, of the sort of capitalistic enterprise of a Disney park, like it is a money-making machine. Right?
Totally.
And I've always been like, the real question is, can you go into that with your eyes open about what it's there to do? And still sort of, okay, if you make your peace with what it is, right? I think it's reasonable to sort of go in that, but if you go into that with your eyes closed. But I also think if you go into some of these circumstances where Christmas is coming. I mentioned I'm going to spend some time with family this weekend for a funeral. People are taking trips to Disney. It is predictable that at some point there's going to be conflict. And I think a lot of what we've talked about is not necessarily how you manage someone else's issue, but how you yourself react to the conflict. Do you notice sort of how you shift identities, right? That in your house, Andee, you are the matriarch, and then you get into a room with your parents, who I love dearly, and your role shifts, but you're also a big sister, right?
Mhm.
And what
Mhm.
that means, right? And what it means now that your family dynamic is changing. Like, it used to be just you, Ed, and the girls. Now it's you, Ed, the girls, and their partners.
Mhm.
And their partners didn't grow up in the same house and don't necessarily have the same approach to conflict or resolving conflict.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden you go from all the 4 people bouncing off each other to 6 people bouncing off each other. And then you add
Mhm.
me, and everybody's just joyful and happy because
That's exactly what happened.
it's
Oh
like
my
it's like
God.
Santa Claus. It's like Santa Claus showed up.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I'm just appreciative of you being here. So thank you.
Aw, thank you so much. No, I really enjoyed chatting about these different things because I just want, I hope people who are like listening know that like just normalizing the stress. I feel like I can feel kind of guilty to feel stressed with your family or stressed with your friends. And just normalizing that. I hope this helps you get a little more, feeling compassionate towards yourself as you're navigating these different challenges that come up. Maybe getting to know more of like, how is this activating in my body? What am I feeling? And then also, how can I kind of repair any harm that might be happening, or protect myself in the way that I need to during this time, and find some meaning making and whatever that means for you. But I think, yeah, the biggest one is just like kind of maybe slowing down and giving yourself some compassion and through all of this, and know that, yeah, you are definitely not alone.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And if you appreciate that as well, and have maybe more questions for Emilie, or just want to say, maybe share an experience or two, you can find us on social media at Dueling Disney. We are on Facebook, we're on Instagram, Threads, and we haven't jumped to BlueSky yet. Al, did you get on BlueSky yet? No.
I'm on there.
Okay. Are
I'm
you?
on there. It's great.
Emilie, what's your handle on BlueSky?
The Red Valkyrie.
Ooh, that is
Nice.
perfect.
My Danish heritage
I
coming
love
out.
it. I love it. We will put her handle, her BlueSky handle, on our show notes so you can contact her directly. Also, if you want to join in the conversation, head on over to Facebook group. Our group is the Dueling Disney Community Duelists, and we can talk more there. But this has just been so great, and I appreciate it so much, especially before the holidays, and look forward to putting these tips into practice the next time we take a big trip.
Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Wait for the podcast to come to a complete stop before disembarking. Permanece centavos, por favor.